time for Cutting Edge Consciousness with Freeman Michaels and Barnett Bain. Thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And welcome to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Freeman Michaels here with Barnett Bain. And
good moment, everyone. And it's the Wives Show.
It is
We're
the
back
Wives Show.
2014 with the Wives Show.
2014.
Whoa, I'm sorry. That's off to a good start with the Wives Show.
That's how we start the new
Jasmine
year.
Michaels. Hi, Jasmine.
Hi, how are
Happy
you?
New Year.
Happy New Year to you guys.
And Sandy
Happy
Stuart.
New Year.
Happy
Hi.
New Year, honey.
Happy New Year.
Barnett, I love this little shiny thing on your lapel.
Thank you.
Was that a New Year's gift from your wife?
Actually, it was a New Year's gift from, it wasn't even a New Year's gift, but I got it around New Year's. I've been doing some teaching in New York City. And before the holidays, I met a new friend in Manhattan named Gary, and I recognized him at once as a friend and as a teacher. And we sparked instantly. He's has a very big jewelry business.
Oh, interesting.
In Forest Hills, and he presented me with this gorgeous thing.
Wow.
A circle of hearts and a pentangle and some rubies representing the elements and this beautiful little small diamond in the center that is the integrated true self. He's a beautiful guy, a very mystical guy. And here and there I run into people wearing the same pin.
Really?
And I realize that he has quite a wonderful network. So where'd you get that? It's Gary.
Oh, really? That is wild.
Isn't it wonderful? And
beautiful.
It is a magnet. People are just magnetized by it. People say, have you been knighted or something?
Yeah.
I guess maybe I have.
How was it to receive it? How did you feel about receiving it?
Wow. Well, giving and receiving. Receiving is an edge for me.
I know that. That's why
I am more
asked.
comfortable giving, and as you bring it up, it's not necessarily because I'm so generous, but there is a humility that comes with receiving.
Yeah.
That is that I'm not so comfortable with. Of acknowledging that I am deserving and that acknowledging that there's still a part of me that creates hierarchies. And that is afraid. That is afraid of receiving. That is afraid that it is somehow weak and that it is somehow there's an indebtedness. There's a whole bunch of stuff around how I was raised and socialized around that. And so for me to receive, this was presented to me. Wow, we have some technical issues here. Let me just put this back on.
Yeah, perfect.
It was
That's it.
presented to me in front of a room of several hundred people.
Wow.
By surprise. And so, as I said, Gary's a beautiful new friend and absolutely a teacher because he led me through a moment of high teaching in front of quite a large group. So how was it to receive it? It was, it expanded it expanded my sense of self, and it definitely put me in touch with how uncomfortable that is, and also at the same time how exhilarating and beautiful it is to receive. So
It's there's so much in that story. I mean, it's a powerful gift in its symbology. But I think of the intention behind the giving of it, how directly intentional, what a choice it is to give that gift, that particular gift, to select out, who do I give this gift to? Who do I include in my circle, as it were? I think because, we have, again, the Wives Show. Last year, we were talking about sex, which has a giving and receiving component to it. And as a theme, the intentionality in my giving, we recently had a situation where we all have, and we've covered this in the show, these little aspects of us that run away with our lives in moments. They're little storylines that follow, for me, my little martyr storyline. And we had a busy day, and I had made a big dinner for the family. And Jasmine hadn't seen the kids and wanted to spend time with them. So after dinner, she went off to read with them. And I sat there in the kitchen with these pots and pans and started running my martyr story in my head, like no one's helping me. And I caught myself, and I recognized an opportunity to support something. And that's Jasmine connecting with the kids. I pick the kids up. I have a lot of time with the kids. So that conscious choice to give her that space and to do the dishes in that context versus, obligatory and running my racket about how I'm misunderstood and mistreated.
You made it a giving.
And a conscious giving. And it's very interesting because a lot of what we've done this past year is we've really gotten clear as a family what we want to create. What is the quality of experience that we want to create as a family? And this was very much in service to that. That choice, that shift to let me do this in service to, or for the sake of, Jasmine having quality time with the kids. And that's a different kind of giving, because in the past I would have made a big production of my giving, right? And I don't want to do that. I want to be clear about my giving, versus what you were saying before, giving really concerned the whole time as to what I'm going to get in return. Is this fair?
Jazz, did you feel given to?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I really feel the shift and the difference with Freeman now participating in a way where there's nothing attached. It's not with 50-50, it has to look 50-50. I think that kind of was something that we did before. It's like, okay, I work, you do this, you do that. Like it all had to be very fair. And now it's just, it runs smoother because we both realize that things need to get done. The kids need to get their homework done. They need to be bathed. We all need to get our needs met. So yeah, it's feels
spontaneous giving. Because I think in the past we would plan out giving. And again, there's a lot of negotiation about fair and who's doing what. And there's even maybe a strategy, like if I give this, then I won't have to do that later. I mean, I don't want to admit to that, but there's a part of me, that does that stuff, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I'm really thinking, as you all talk about the intention behind my giving, especially at home in relationship. And I'm aware that I give a lot of things that I really don't want to give because I feel like, well, if I give, then I'll be loved and I'm safe. So that's not a very clean intention. And it also doesn't land as a gift.
right.
That's right.
It doesn't land as a gift. And then I'm also
right.
thinking about how uncomfortable it is for me to ask for what I want, so that when Barnett gives me a gift, whether it's doing the dishes or participating in the home in a certain way, when I don't have to ask and I just walk in and I go to empty the dishwasher and it's emptied, it lands as such a gift.
Yeah.
And I can receive it. I must be, the love language, acts of service, because empty the dishwasher and I will do anything for you. Just, I'm there. I'm in such love and appreciation. But when I have to, even if I have to ask and say, will you empty the dishwasher? And he says, sure, it's not the same.
Right.
It's not the same.
It's not the same.
So it's those times, I think, what you were speaking to, it's like giving for no reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you can give for no reason, not because I think I'm going to be loved. I'm just going to do this because I want to, and be willing to say, I don't want to do it now, and take the chance that maybe I won't be loved, and ask for someone else. Give to myself. Am I willing to give to myself?
It's interesting because am I a trustworthy giver?
Yeah.
I won't say names, but I have a family member who's not. I'm always suspicious of her giving, and frankly, avoid that because it's just too big of a price. I'm like, well, maybe, because there's always a hook at the back end, and so it's tricky in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's so interesting because now that you guys are talking about this, it brings to mind that Freeman and I recently said, I finally see you and I love you. And it feels like we've just landed. I mean, I don't want to make it sound like it's all peaches and, cream, like it's all just perfect, because we have those moments where it's like, wow, like that, what was that all about, that argument or something? But I had this experience early on in a relationship where I got very sick and I needed Freeman to help me, and he kind of panicked and he didn't really know what to do. And just recently I had these 2 episodes of having a very terrible cold and then being sick again. And Freeman really took care of me. And it was so, like, he doesn't realize it, and I'm just telling you now, but he doesn't realize how much that meant to me. Yeah. That I know that as I get older, inevitably there's going to be that moment where we're going to need to take care of each other. And he showed up and he made me chicken noodle soup.
Chicken rice soup.
Delicious.
Soup.
And no, and he really nurtured me, and he took care of me, and he healed me. And in those moments I felt so vulnerable, and I didn't think, like, is he going to show up?
Yeah.
But he showed up.
Yeah.
And it's those little ways of just like, of knowing that he's taking care of me. In the mornings he does this thing, this kind of a practice. I don't know if you notice it, but he'll come and he'll say, are you ready for your coffee? And he'll make me a coffee, and he puts a little cream, and he knows how to do it just right, and he brings me my coffee in the morning, and it just makes me feel like, I'm loved. It's just that so little, loving, moment. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm in. Being a trustworthy giver is probably then the commitment this year. We make commitments on the show, for those of you who are watching, listening, whatever, that last year, the first year was about connecting and being more intimate. I can't remember what last year's was, but this year I want to be a trustworthy giver. And it does have to do with this. It's interesting because we talked about leadership and how that word can get kind of brittle. And this is what leadership is. It's having a sense of what I want to create in my marriage and in my relationships, and then making choices in service to that clearly and spontaneous and cleanly, where it's really trustworthy, and it isn't me running my little, if I do this, I'll get story, That part, I think, as we like to say, it comes along too. I'm not saying that I'm cured of that. It's just this, the growth process. There's a higher form of giving. And I love the idea, Barnett, of receiving too, that I probably could work on being a better receiver, because I tend to deflect, right? Oh, no, you don't need to do that for me, or it's okay, I got it, I my own deserving, I don't know. I mean, there's layers to this, right? But that's another piece.
Well, I am discovering that I am not authentically, you're talking about trustworthy giving. I hold that as an exalted giving that has no transactional piece to it. There's no under the table agenda of, if I give, I'm going to get. So to be able to really express that in my life without the under the table agenda, I can't give any more than I am able to receive. And part of my own challenge about developing my receiving muscle, becoming embodied enough and mature enough to receive, involves recognizing and letting go of all of the clutter that stands between me and conditional giving. It's the same clutter that stands between me and unconditional receiving. My giving is conditional, and I don't notice it so much as long as I am the extender. But when I'm the beneficiary of gifts, then I'm more aware of that same clutter that stands between me and being connected to others.
Yeah. We're going to take a quick break. When we get back, there's a little story that pops up for me, my runaway from home story, where I get triggered and I think, well, this is just not the right woman for me. If I found the right woman, I mean, as insane as that seems, because we're very committed to our relationship, that thread still pops up in me. And I have a suspicion that will tie into what we're talking about here. Don't entirely know, but let's take a break. When we come back, I want to wander down that path a little bit, and we'll learn more here on Cutting Edge Consciousness.
Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness. We're glad that you stuck with us. I'm here with Freeman and Sandy and Jasmine, the wives. So before the break, you had already cleared some brush out at the head of a path that you want to wander down.
Well, there's just this little fragmented element within me that was much more predominant in the past. There was a book by John Lee. I don't know if you ever read the Flying Boy series. There was 3 of them. Kind of brilliant, talking about how he would, blow up his relationships and run to the next woman who would save him, kind of thing. And I really related to that when I read that series years ago. It was the early 90s. And it's almost like I watched this part of me come up, this part of me that fantasizes that there's something better. There's some way that, it's like my pouty little boy, like when Jasmine's mad at me or she's having a moment and I run off and if there's just, if there's just some, the right woman. And it's interesting because I even watch the part of me that can, look out in the world and see a woman and go, well, she would really love me in those hurt moments. When I'm not in those hurt moments, people pass me by and it is what it is, right? Maybe it's an attractive woman, but I'm not hooked in that way. Like, oh, well, she would really love me, And it's interesting because I don't want to go to war with that part of me. I'm not saying that part of me is bad. I'm not acting on that part of me. But that little part is in my mind, and I don't know, I'm kind of throwing this out in the room, some way connected to this, afraid to, it's similar to what we've talked about maybe the last 2 years, to go deeper in my intimacy, go deeper in my giving, because I really want to make sure, some part of me doesn't want to invest because I'm little part of me says, well, it's going to end and then I'm going to have to find the woman who really, really loves me.
Mm-hmm. How do you feel about that?
Do you know what I'm talking about, I guess, first of all?
How do you feel about that?
Well, it reminds me of over the years when Barnett and I would argue. I was more like what you're discussing right now. I'm out of here. I don't need this. Yeah. I'm out of here. There's somebody else out there, or even not. Just I'm out of here. I'll be with me. And Barnett used to say, "Come over here and sit down. We're going to work this out because I'm not going to find myself having the same conversation with a different woman 15 years from now."
That's right.
And so it always is a one-person story. It's never the other person, unfortunately. We spend hours and hours ruminating how it is the other person.
Why it's your fault.
Yes, exactly. And so why it's your fault? Well, my fault, this is really coming up as everybody's speaking today. Giving. I'm really thinking about giving, and I think I'm deciding that this year is the year where I'm going to authentically give to myself. And as a woman, and as an 8 Enneagram personality, if anybody out there knows what that is, it's a little bit of a self-reliant person who thinks that they can do it better than anybody else.
And who is also a natural leader.
And, well, that's the high point of it. Yeah, thank you. That's the high side of it. There's some less attractive sides to it. But anyway, there's always this idea, oh, I can do it. I'll just do it. I'll just do it. And then at the end of the day, I've pocketed a lot of resentment. I've got a pocket full of resentment because I'm the one that's decided I could do it. I mean, sometimes I'll be in the kitchen and I'll want you to help me with something, and I'll think, I'm going to ask Barnett to do this, and then I immediately think, but I do it so much better and faster, and I'll just do it. Right. And I'm making a vow now to myself to not do that. I'm really going to give to myself, and if you do it slower or different or your own way, I'm going to breathe and let that be okay. But I'm really going to stop myself from that automatic, I can do it, because that's not giving and loving. And how can I be giving and loving to him if I'm holding this resentment and I'm not giving and loving to myself?
And what Jasmine said earlier, there's going to come a point when, no, you can't do it yourself.
Well,
I mean, when Jasmine was sick in bed, because she's got a little bit of this too, right?
Yeah.
And I had to step up, and then she was like, wow, I really can count on him, because she's very similar to you. I mean, this is a doer right here.
Oh, I know. Yeah. I can tell.
And the world has already hit that point. Yeah. By the way, I mean, so we're we're so focused on our ego structures.
Yes.
The world has long since hit that point where we can't do it ourselves, that we can't meet the challenges of this world becoming new by ourselves, that it is about synergies, and it is about receiving, and it is about allowing others to throw in their talents and to throw in their expertise at the level of their own competency, and for the rest of us to, individual by individual, to open our hearts and to let that be okay and deal with our own triggers and our own, well, I could do it better, or I can't give them the arena to be self-empowered because I either think I can do it better, or I think, in my case, it'll erode my own sense of status, or if I can't do it for them, then I'm not so important. I mean, we all have our own game that we bring to that.
Yeah, and I think also, as you're saying it, I realize that that's really my male chauvinist domination.
Yeah.
And I'm a woman, but that's where my
No,
chauvinism
that's right.
comes in. That's my that's
Dominate
how I
and control.
dominate. I will do it, and I will do it better. I just a couple of months ago got this brown recluse spider bite on my face, and I was really afraid. And I realized that because I play this self-reliant, oh, I'll do it. Barnett is so unfamiliar with me being afraid that when I was afraid, he gets afraid, and that he moved through his fear, and then he could be there for me. But initially I saw, oh, he can't be with my fear because I've never expressed it.
Yeah.
He can't be with my pain because I don't express it. If I express it, then it gives you the opportunity to show up, like you talked about Freeman showing up. But when I am in this dominant and dominating role, there's no room for you to show up.
You know how when you're driving
for me
along,
to give to myself.
have you ever had this, Jasmine? You're driving along, you're driving or Freeman's driving, and the other person is always saying, "Go left, go right, watch out for this, watch out for that," and whoever the driver,
Who could that other person be?
the driver just goes to sleep.
Right.
You're just not participating. It's you're suddenly. I know when it happens to me, I'm aware. I'm not focused on where I need to turn because I know I have this other GPS person operating.
And then they get out of the car and you have to find your way back.
Yeah, now you're
Jasmine, I
lost.
dropped off somewhere and she was telling me right, left, and then I had to go home and I was like, I have no idea where I am because I wasn't paying attention.
Or when I stopped, when one day I decided, wow, this is sick. This sucks. I'm
Right,
just
we're not
going
doing
to
this.
be in the car
Yeah.
and shut up. And if we go the longer way or the wronger way, I will get through it. And so I stopped. And then he'd say to me, "Where do we go?" And then I'd go, "What do you mean, where do we go?" And then I was upset about it because I thought I wanted him to know, but I had never. And then you realize that, well, I never have to pay attention. And I know when I'm being driven by you, I often now don't pay attention.
That
It's the
just
same
happened.
thing.
I don't think it was around driving, but you had said, "Well, what do you do when I'm not here?" And I said something
know
like,
that
"I pay
line.
attention when you're not here."
Yeah,
because when you're
exactly.
here, you're doing it. So why would I bother?
Exactly.
Is that familiar
so
to you?
funny. Oh my gosh, it's so familiar. I need to take the lesson of how to stay quiet still, though.
Yeah.
Because I always, God, you just cut that person off. Why do you tailgate? Why? It's like one thing after another. And I'm actually the person who can't sleep in the car. If he's driving, I just feel like I'm the best driver in the world. He just is just totally incapable of driving without my help.
But we do that. There's our friend Stuart Emery likes to say, "How you do one thing is how you do everything."
Right.
So that is a really fun, and it's a playful. We can laugh about it. It's a playful kind of little lens into a particular behavior, but it shows up. The more that I look into my life, I see that it shows up everywhere. I'm playing that out everywhere. Either I am the dominating driver, or I am the non-participant.
Being driven.
Either I'm not the dominating backseat driver, or I am the non-participating designated driver. But I'm not really doing anything. I'm not really I'm not showing up.
Yeah.
So there is a boundary making that is required here, and I want to just steer our conversation now into what is involved in honoring ourselves enough in a marriage, in a committed marriage, in a committed long-term marriage, where we can create boundaries for ourselves and say, you're inundating me, or you're crossing the line here. And that's very challenging for me. And I'd want to hear your feedback on whether you're exploring the same sorts of things. And
Absolutely.
and
Yeah,
how
it
works.
comes back to the vision that we created. So we have our personal vision, but this year we did a family vision. And so again, it comes back to in service to creating that, the quality of experiences. I think 8 or 9 items we have at the top, which represent how we want to relate to each other, how we want to feel in our own home. And in service to that, we've created practices and we've created some standards, some things that we will and won't do, agreements, set agreements, and things we do as conscious expressions of the vision, right? And the key is that the vision is quality-based, and so the practices are great because they're planned. What is so beautiful for us is the spontaneous ways we get to fulfill on the vision. This was kind of last year's conversation because last year we were working to have spontaneous connection.
Passion, connection, intimacy. Yes. And all that you're saying is absolutely true until it's not.
Right.
Yeah, we want to hear about that.
That's the part. That's the gravy. That's the part where you go, wow. Recently, and for whatever reason, it always happens on Black Friday. There's this moment where Freeman and I have
it did happen.
this wonderful opportunity to be alone. And my in-laws are wonderful. They come about every 3 months. They watch the kids. We get a weekend alone. And every time I look forward to it, and yet every single time there's a major
Meltdown.
Major fight, So at some point, Freeman said, I really just don't like the way that you're fighting lately. You're just really mean. Basically, that's what he said. And that's all he had to say. And then, of course, I got really angry and I just went crazy. But it's so funny. It's like if we don't take care of the relationship, it really can fall apart. If we don't constantly recommit to staying connected, to being in love, to having the vision, I see where it could happen. I look at you look at these magazines and you see these couples and they look like they're committed. They're the stars, the famous people, right? And you see them and there's constantly this all affection that, that they show each other and the recommitments and then all of a sudden you hear that they're not together and there's a part of you that kind of your heart breaks. It's like, wow, I really wanted that to work.
Yeah.
Well, that's the fantasy. The thing about the projection onto stars is it's all projection and they can't hold it. It's too much energy because it's, I only had this much minuscule stardom as a soap star in the middle 90s. But I really remember that, how much was being projected onto me and just holding that and living up to that.
So, but inside of our marriages,
our real lives.
yeah, inside of our marriages, I'm so aware of how much I project onto myself, my own stories, and increasingly how much I project onto you.
Yeah. There's a practice that we haven't done in a while, but it would actually be a good thing to do at the beginning of the year. And it's the game of being less familiar. And we, you get in a relationship and I think I know what he's means.
Is that a new sweater you're wearing?
Well, it kind of is, yes.
See how
Very
good
good.
that is? That could lead to other things.
But no, if we were on a date, I would ask a lot more questions.
Yeah.
I would want to know, do you like this? How do you feel about this? What do you do when you feel like this? I would to get to know Barnett. But now we assume we know each other, and sometimes we make an effort. Tonight we are on a first date, and we act completely different. We're on our best behavior. We're asking a lot of questions. We're in inquiry the whole night.
We haven't done that for quite a while.
No, I would like to do that. What are you doing tonight? Oh, we're
I
going.
have to check my schedule.
Yeah,
I have to check the time because we have to take a commercial break. But when we get back, I want to pick up right here because the making the relationship new is a powerful practice. I love the idea of that. as a conscious choice.
So we will be right back to make the relationship new after we take care of some new business. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And we're back on Cutting Edge Consciousness. The wives are here.
The wives are here. I just heard that I have to cut my nails for my wife.
I love those. I love those.
Little
in between.
side
Yeah.
bar.
By the way, get behind the ear
Yeah.
too. I just completely lost where we were going. All right, so
we were going.
Yeah, please.
We were talking
Familiarity.
Yes, talking about familiarity.
Yeah, and creating
making the
newness.
relationship new, allowing it to evolve, to change, and to grow and become new.
Yeah.
Recently, I said to Freeman, it's been a long time since I've seen you clean shaven, know?
Oh, that was a newness.
And I said, why don't we just try that, And it was so funny because it's like we've been
You
playing with
actually
that for a
said
little
it.
bit.
You were a little passive aggressive, Jen. You said your beard is getting awfully gray. We told the truth, which led to maybe I'll shave my face. Go ahead.
Anyway, no, I really love that idea because I was saying in the break that oftentimes I'll look over. I mean, sometimes I look over at older couples and I go, oh my gosh, they're so sweet. Look at them. They're holding hands and they're so, they're so sweet to each other. But a lot of the time I look over and I see people and they're, on their own phones, or they're ignoring each other, or they're sitting there and they're not saying a word. And I just think to myself,
Parallel lives.
oh my gosh, I'm so afraid that that's going to be me someday, that I'm not going to have anything to say to my partner because he knows me entirely and he's bored to tears and I'm bored to tears. And that is scary.
Yeah, we had this moment recently where, very recently, like last few days, where I just looked at my wife and said, to you, Jasmine, I said, I just so like you. In fact, there was a little text. We had a conversation one morning. I spontaneously, Jasmine's in her little area getting ready, makeup area, and our bedroom is right there. It's a little alcove in our bedroom.
Putting on my war paint.
And I laid down with the dog on my chest, little Gracie, and we had this fantastic conversation. And then I text her, I loved our conversation today. And that we have those conversations, and we went and saw the Hockney exhibit in San Francisco. A lot of it is that the newness is, do we create situations where we're going to have newness? One of the things that couples do is they fall into routines, the patterning. And so some element of creating newness is consciously breaking the patterning, going and doing something that's going to provoke a conversation, right? That's going to provoke an adventure,
It's relationship is such a dynamic function. It's such a dynamic system. After, 34, 33, 30, lots. After 3 decades plus of marriage, I know from experience that relationship, like the moon, like the seasons, love waxes and wanes. Mm-hmm. And there are natural cadences to love and to our ability to go deeper into relationship. And it requires a certain care and feeding, and also a certain kind of awareness that it does wax and wane. There are days when the moon is new and days when the moon is full. And there are phases of a relationship where it seems to be static. And if we don't become reactive to these things, but responsive to them, and then feed them with attention, and there is always a green shoot. There's always a growth edge. It's very easy to mistake the wane of a relationship, the natural cadence of a relationship, whether it's over 30 years or over a moon cycle, to mistake that as and to make a judgment about it and to make actions about it that are definitive and that create space in a relationship from which there's no return. You have to keep returning to the love and returning to the love and feeding it and feeding it and feeding it. It's when I was very young, I used to believe that love was like a country and western song, that it was supposed to just happen to you.
Yeah.
And that real love, you didn't work, it just happened to you, that you were soul mated and that you didn't have to show up that you didn't have to bring skills, tools, that you didn't have to refine those skills, you didn't have to refine those tools, and you didn't have to be a part of exploring and a creator of the relationship.
That's the big lie. I mean,
That's
that
the big
really
lie.
is the big lie. If there's one thing I would say to young people is like, be really skilled at staying in relationships.
Or
with
listen
people.
to new country music.
Or don't listen to country music.
As the new country music is not on that program.
I recently had a new experience that I was conscious. It's not a new experience, but I was conscious of it for the first time, I think. And Barnett had come off of about 3 or 4 months of working really like a crazy man, getting up at 6 in the morning and starting with
You
conference.
mean last week? You're talking about the phase that ended like last week?
Yeah, it ended a couple of
Right
weeks
before the
ago.
holidays.
Yeah, so it was about a 3-month phase where 6 in the morning till literally 3 in the morning, and where I really had to say, can I speak to you now? And he'd say, no, I'm busy. And then I'd say, okay, when can I speak to you? I have a logistics question. And I knew I just had to stay out of the way and give him this space. And I felt a little abandoned from times, but I worked on myself because I knew he was doing what he had to do. And then it was over, and I had, not over, but it was winding down for the holidays. So I knew that there was going to be more time and space. And what happened was when it wound down, I was all ready to connect. And he kind of went into a postpartum depression in a way, because, coming this high, you can finally relax. And then one part of it is, well, all this energy I've been putting out, is it going to come? Now you can stop and ask, is it going to come to fruition? And then also just the energetic, I think, of that kind of pace with, he was going to bed at 8 o'clock at night instead of staying up and talking with me. And I found it really hard to stay in my joy. And I found it really hard to stay happy. And I was really looking at it for the first time with, wow, how do I, and you mentioned it before, stay in my boundary and hold my own joy and happiness and allow him the space to go through what he needs to go through, knowing full well that he was going to pop up one day and start singing. And he did. One day he popped up and I heard him in the kitchen and he was humming again. And I knew, I heard the humming and I knew, he's back. But it was very strange and a little scary for me, because as you say, as we do get older, there's going to be circumstances and situations where one person may not be in the top condition or may not be even physically here, somebody's going to die one day. And how do we hold our resonance and love the other person enough to watch them through it? And I didn't do very well. I was really kind of like, oh my gosh, where's my joy?
And where's myself in this?
I
mean, so one of the beautiful things is the interdependence that we establish in relationship, where we really come to rely on each other, which is such a beautiful thing. But there's another side to that. I mean, everything has two sides.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And the more intimate I can be in loving, in that moment, the best thing I could do was to really be in relationship with myself and not look to him to be providing anything.
Right.
That was the most loving thing. So being separate was the most loving thing, what the relationship was calling for at the time.
That's so interesting.
And
it's almost like when I go away, I come back, and your response when I come back is always really sweet, that you miss me, which is, and the other thing that's really sweet, because we have a little story that she does more than me, and she does, around the house. She just does. She's a doer, right? So she
does more than
It's true.
But what's wonderful when I go away, I come back and she always says to me, God, I realize how much you do.
It's true.
And I'm like,
That
wow,
is
that's
absolutely
cool.
true. Yeah.
So our stories are really interesting. I mean, I'm kind of changing topics, but I don't necessarily mean to, so we can quickly come back perhaps. But just that, how committed are we to our story? We're kind of laughing about that because we all saw American Hustle, where the line was, is that the story you want to go with? Which we say at home. And the kids actually say to each other now, because Isabel will start in on Antonio, and they're like this little old bickering couple. And Antonio or one of them will say, is that the story you want to go with? Because that's what we say. Is that the story? Because we say it to them, is that the story you want to go with? Is that the interpretation you want to go with? Because we have these little small story interpretations. Anyhow, I didn't mean to divert, but it just came up. spontaneous.
Is that the story you want to go with?
Yeah. All right, I did mean to do it. I'm just kidding.
You know, to speak to one of the things you said, I've been was married and divorced once, and I remember feeling completely abandoned in the divorce. Like, I remember how devastating it was because I hadn't established any other relationships, not just with myself. But I didn't really have many girlfriends. I could count them on one hand, and it was really, really hard. And now I find that when Freeman gets in that mode, where he's working, and he's very distracted, I do seek friendship, and I have actually a handful of girlfriends that I connect with. And it's really important to me. Like, it's really important to me. Freeman knows that I've got my book clubs and I've got these things. And I know that I set those up for myself because when he goes away, I have to know that I'm going to be okay. It was just such a learning lesson for me the first go around. I don't ever want to be that, just by myself or just be in my relationship and that be everything to me. Because it was just so devastating.
Yeah, and I think we're so communal by nature, women, that we're not really following our own natural state if we're isolated. You know, we all work together. We went to the hut at the time of the moon together.
Yes.
You know, historically, we depended on each other when the men were out hunting. That was our community.
Right.
So it's very unnatural when we isolate ourselves.
Yeah, I love that stuff. Like the Joy Luck Club, I'm still a big sucker for that. Like women, the red tent, like anything that where women had to come together and we relied on each other and we helped each other, because there are times where we can't rely on our partner. And I think it's really important to have connection with several people in our lives.
There's another layer on this too. One of the things about Black Friday, so we have Thanksgiving with my parents, then we leave. We go stay at a friend's house who always goes away for Thanksgiving, and we get a break. There is a little shock when we get a break for the first half day or so of what do we do with each other? I mean, I'm kind of going back to the prior conversation or part of the conversation where, try something new, do something new. But there's an awkwardness in getting into our relationship again. And we just left the kids up in San Francisco after Christmas to come home for a stretch of time alone again. And it's so nice to say, I really do love you. I really do like you. Wow, we really are friends. So as much as, I don't know, I'm just throwing something into the middle of the conversation that doesn't necessarily have to fit, but it just has come to me spontaneously. That's another thread of all of this.
And also, I think that the arguing is a way to get quick intimacy.
Yeah, that's
You didn't
true.
have very much time. You knew it. You wanted to get in, but it's hard to... It takes time to get back in.
That's
and we
wise.
don't have time in our culture. So a good fight gets you in, especially if you know how to fight well.
Yeah.
And the bond is there. If you know the bond is there and it can't be broken, then it's safe to fight.
Yeah.
And it's a way to go, I'm so sorry. I really do love you. It's a quick and efficient way to get close.
That's a very good
like
point.
that.
That
It's
is a
very
very,
smart.
very good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've done it often.
to that point, I think some of our listeners' ears may be perking now and say, well, how do you know how to fight? And there are some guidelines about fighting. One of those guidelines is to understand that the fight is a symptom of some sense of something else. It's always a symptom of something else, and usually it's a symptom of some fear of loss. And then there are some general rules about fighting, and you just so happens synchronistically that you mentioned them in the coffee shop earlier. And if you want to just bang through them.
Yeah, sure. So speak in terms of me as opposed to you. So I feel, and even the part of me, I talked about this last year, if I say, well, part of me. So I might talk about the part of me that wants to run away right now. Part of me wants to run away right now, or part of me wants to tell the story. Yeah. And then that allows me to simultaneously hold another possibility. So I don't have to stay committed to that story.
And no, always and never, which I do all the time.
You always,
which I always do.
never.
Which you do
unless you do it this way. Part of me wants to tell the story that you always or you never, right? Because that really is symptomatic of the part of me that's going, it'll never work, right? You'll never love me enough. I mean, there's a part of me that feels that way. So I don't want to ignore that part of me. but I also don't want to, let that part drive the bus, as we like to say. So sometimes it's very helpful to say, part of me's feeling really needy right now, or part of me's feeling jealous right now, or overwhelmed, or scared. And then that allows that part of me to have a voice without having to defend it or get her to collude with me, and that's the story, and that's what's really happening. It's just an aspect of my experience.
And then finally, speak from the I.
And speak from the I. It's always I statements, how it feels to be me, and what I'm working on. And there's one
and
more.
Ask questions.
And there's one more, which is lead with intention. So I'm feeling disconnected, and I really want to be connected to you. So I want to talk about, or I love you so much, and I'm pulling away. And so, can I tell you about something you said? Not because it was right or wrong. I just want to tell you how I heard it. So if I can lead with intention, my intention is to reconnect. My intention is to, that is a generous offer. Versus, you were such a jerk when you said that, or whatever. That's not that wise. If I can get the intention in, then we can talk about it. Mm-hmm. But it has to be leading with intention.
I love this. It's like, take our advice. We don't use it enough.
Right. Well, so look, what
in
you
a good
said,
moment, we do.
As we wind down, the thing that's really important is relationships, are successful when you work at them and when you have certain skills and certain tools. We've all done our relationship work. You have done coursework. We have done Harvard Hendricks Imago practices and process. A couple has a spiritual path. And so, and it's a big part of the work that we all do is I want to be really good in relationship. It's such an important part of my life.
I think a big part of it also is to know your own triggers and not act on them.
Yeah.
Be able to know, oh, he said that. That's, of course, that triggers me every time. That's the codependency. That's just my trigger. Take a few breaths and not act on that. If you're really familiar with what triggers you, you don't have to be at the effect of it.
Yeah. And with that, we've come to the end of the Wine Show.
I know. This is so sad.
Maybe if we're good, they'll invite us back during the year.
Yes.
If we're very good.
We'll invite you back for Groundhog Day.
Yeah, right. Good. Groundhog Day.
Day. That's my birthday.
It is? Okay.
We'll be back for Jasmine's birthday. So we're going to make that commitment
we'll be
now.
back sooner than that. So we invite you all to keep coming back to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Thanks for listening.
Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Happy New
New
Year.
Year.